And we should be live. Welcome everyone. I'm just gonna give it a minute until I can see that you guys are indeed in the chat. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me properly. And welcome Joanne, nice to see you here. So we've got about 10 minutes before to start. If anyone was completely new to me, if you wonder what's happening and what we're doing, we've got 10 minutes to get to know each other in the chat before we go for a live little walk of Bristol. So if you were watching this on replay in the next few days or weeks, if you want to skip the hellos and go straight into the chat, feel free to skip the next 10 minutes. Yes, you can hear me. Perfect. Right. You know what? Let's test the microphone straight away. Most of you know the drill. I'm going to tap the microphone 3 times. You should be able to hear the tapping. If you don't, let me know in the chat. Right. Let me know in the chat that you've indeed heard the little tapping. You should have heard 3 taps. And welcome, Nikki. Welcome everyone that just joined. And Natasha is here. How have you been, Natasha? How was you had the operation, right? Let me check how long we've got. We've got about 7 minutes before to start. You heard the tap, perfect, thank you very much. May I also ask, are you able to hear any music in the background? I'm hoping not, because I don't want to have any. I don't want to have any copyright claims, because there's a bar, like a rooftop that's got very loud music. If you were able to hear it, I'd probably move behind the building for the next 7 minutes. Oh, boo. Okay, well, we'll think of you on the 25th then, Natasha. And welcome, Rose. You can hear you can hear perfect. That's absolutely brilliant. We'll have to go past the pub, but I don't want to have any music in the background for too long, because of course, in terms of copyrights, YouTube wouldn't like that. And welcome, Martin. Welcome everyone that just joined. Let me give you a glimpse of the view in case you were bored of my face. We've got a few minutes to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. You might hear a bit of traffic in the background. It is a busy road. Well, not that busy, because depending on your type of vehicle, you have to pay to drive into Bristol, like the ULEZ in London. So luckily, thanks to that, there's not too much traffic. Well, although some might argue that it's not great for businesses, because then, you know, in terms of the retail industry and stuff, you know, people trading in the city center might have a few less customers. But in terms of air pollution, it's much better. And we've got 5 minutes to go. 5 minutes before we officially make a move. That's why I flipped the camera around. Some skater boys or cyclists might enjoy the attention. So it is nearly 7:45 p.m. UK time, and it is still bright for another probably another hour and a half at this time of the year, so that's quite good. Oh, thanks ever so much, Natasha. That's very much appreciated. Let's see what time it is. Oops. 4 minutes to go. And Lethargy is here. Welcome, Lethargy. Oh yeah, thanks Rose. It's yeah, it's always amazing to be able to have some likes, some thumbs up, or people subscribing. So that really helps the algorithms. So if you enjoy what you see, or if you have a good time with us live tonight, make sure you do that. It helps the channel being noticed, or at least exposed to new users. And welcome everyone that just joined. We've got, let me tell you precisely, 3 minutes to go. You see, I've got my big rucksack. I was away this weekend. That's why I'm here. I was in Burnham-on-Sea for a job. So that's how I managed to take you for a little live in Bristol. And welcome, Marian. Hi, Shaz. So it's only my second time here, and the first time I don't remember much. Of course, as usual, by all means, ask me any questions you might have, but I might know or I might not know. Although I've done my homework, I don't know everything here. I've only been here for a few hours. And I've been walking a lot with my heavy bag because I wanted to explore and prepare the route. What kind of jobs am I doing? I was at this time of the year in May. I take a few photography jobs. I used to be a photographer before to be a tour guide. So I was photographing a girls' football tournament in Breen and Burnham-on-Sea. So that was fun. A lot of people spoke funny because there were a lot of teams coming from South Wales. Surely not as bloody as London, Shaz. Well, proportionally to the population, I think it's not far off. I've actually got two books of Bristol murders, and I only had time to read one, but that was enough to get quite a few bloody stories. So apparently there are many more. So let's see. 1 minute to go. And I see I've got an email. I can click on it right now, but if it's any of you dropping me a little tip on PayPal or buy me a coffee, that's very, very much appreciated. Let me gracefully stand up. The music is getting even louder. We'll try not to stay in the area too much. So if anyone was completely new to me, I'm Natalie, and I usually do some live streams in London. Well, I'll do anywhere I go really, but usually I'm in London. Exactly, Rose. And welcome, Laurie. Nice to see you here. Hi, Ronnie. Nice to have you all along. It's always a pleasure to have you on board. Let me see if it is time to go. Yes, it is officially 1:45. So without further ado, let me flip this camera around and let's go. So first, before we go much further, I need to show you a plinth that most of you would have seen on TV about 5 years ago now. Even internationally, I'm sure you've seen that plinth because it was very much big news in 2020 as part of the Black Lives Matter movement. And this little plinth over here used to be a statue of Edward Colston, a very important man for Bristol history. He was he was in international trade, you know. Bristol has a lot of maritime history, really, and he was a very rich man that brought a lot of wealth into the city. He gave a lot of money to charities as well. You know, he was a philanthropist. But of course, as you might know, he was a lot of his money came from the triangular trade. So, you know, his money came from slavery. which is, for us, it's crazy today to imagine that such a philanthropist could also be a slave trader. But at the time, the church didn't tell you not to sell people. So yeah, some of you might remember, but through the Black Lives Matters movement, the statue was publicly defaced and removed. They dragged the statue into the floating harbor down there, so they got rid of him. It had been a while that some Bristolians were complaining about that statue and its legitimacy, and eventually they decided to go for it through the protest. People took the statue down. The police was there, but they decided at the time it was probably safer not to intervene, because otherwise it could have escalated. And after that was actually quite cute. I think it was literally a few days later, they placed a statue of a protester, Jane Reed. She had been photographed standing on the plinth. It's not bronze, it's some kind of black resin. I've got a photo of them dropping coolstone into the water as well. 24 hours later, though, they removed Jane's statue. I'll just move the photos, bear with me. There's another statue here, but that was a politician from the 18th century. His name is Burke, conservative. I think he wrote about the French Revolution and all that. So yeah, that's a shame that they removed Jane Reed's statue. Well, to an extent, I kind of understand why the council did that, because having a statue, it's not the type of decision that one individual can decide. I think she's in the museum as well. So both of them are now in the museum. I think they are in the M Shed Museum. I haven't been. It was closed on a Monday, but they are. I think it's a good alternative. So Coolstone is there. His statue is still defaced, with the. Actually, I've got a photo. So yeah, he's now in the museum with the graffiti over his face and stuff, and he's not, he's not standing up like proudly. And they kept it as it is, as a little memento of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think Jane Reed is there as well. So you've got the two statues in the museum. And so far, they've decided to keep the plinth as it is, empty, with a little plaque explaining the event. That'll be interesting to see what happens in the future, if they decide to place anyone else on the plinth, but probably not. Just waiting to cross. Some people have gone past, but let's be. Yes, exactly, Laurie, slave owner. He was a slave owner and a slave trader. Bristol was very much a big player in terms of the triangular trade, because it's a big port, and a lot of the wealth that came into the city actually came from slavery, sadly. But Bristol has also been quite good at, acknowledging the past, and also in terms of being progressive, and in terms of anti-racism as well. In the 60s, we had the Bristol bus boycott, because those local buses at the time, they were pretty much officially kind of discriminating against black drivers. But would you believe, in the 60s it was not actually illegal? And there's a Jamaican gentleman, I think his name was Guy Bailey. he was able to prove that he was rejected because he was black, and Bristolians decided to start the bus boycott, and that worked. They actually changed the politics as well as the criteria to be employed as a bus driver. So Bristol was already working hard on the anti-racism front. Anyway, let me show you this lovely telephone box. I think we talked about those being sometimes used as a cash withdrawal point, but we don't really have many in London. So here is one. You still have an old telephone on the other side, but actually it does have some power, so it probably still works. Anyway, let's go down. On this part of the street, we had at some point in the 18th century a shop from a shoemaker that burned down. It was actually a scam. He was trying to do insurance fraud, but that was a horrible murderer. That nasty little man was, he was married actually to a wife that was much wealthier than he was, and he had, his name was Edwin Bailey. He had, I don't want to say the R word, but he had basically assaulted sexually a young girl in a shop. Her name was Mary Jerking, and he got away with it, and then he managed to assault her again, and he got her pregnant. Look at this one, Edward VII. So that's quite an old box. So yeah, he got that young lady pregnant, and so they went to the magistrate. Somehow he got away with the assault. Not sure how. They probably couldn't prove that it was not welcomed. But he had to give her child support, and he claimed it was not his baby at all, and he was really furious about having to give child support. And the poor young girl, she had to raise the baby, and she had to find a job at the same time. She then she was leaving the baby with her grandmother, and then she'd go on work. When they met a strange lady called Anne Barry. She exactly, Natasha, consensual, that's the term I was looking for. So yeah, they met that lady, a strange lady called Anne, that approached them, and she claimed that the baby was reminding her of her lost baby, and she kind of became friend with Anne and with the grandmother, and she says, I'll refer you to an agency that helps little bastards. They'll send you a letter, Inette. And yeah, soon after they got a letter from a lady called Isabella Smith, and that so-called Isabella had sent some magnesium powder to help the baby with the teething. Soon after they put so the grandmother actually put the powder on the little baby's teeth. 2 hours later, the baby was dead. It was poison. Of course, the police got involved. Isabella Smith did not exist, and when they traced back the handwriting, it actually looked very, very much like Edwin Bailey's handwriting. So quite a sad story. He had found a way to eliminate the baby. Luckily, he was caught. So the first lady, Anne, she actually We don't really know whether she was in love with him or what. She was his cleaner, so he got her to approach the family to pretend to like the baby, and then put them in touch with that imaginary Isabella. But yeah, very, very sad story. But luckily they were caught and they were hanged, both of them. So at least they did not get away with murder. We are now on College Green, and straight up that street, that is Park Street, there was not some of you might remember that case, 2010. There was a young girl that disappeared after going for a drink in a pub over here on this street. She lived in Clifton, so straight up you'd end up in Clifton. That's where you have the Clifton Suspension Bridge and stuff. She was a very pretty lady, Jo Yates, 25 years old, I think she was. She just moved in with her boyfriend Greg. They were gonna start a new life together. It was just before Christmas. Greg was gonna come and spend the first Christmas with his new in-laws and stuff. So the couple was very happy. And that very weekend, Greg had gone to visit some family or friends in Chester, I think it was. And when he came back on the Sunday night, Jo was nowhere to be seen. He entered the flat, her phone was there, everything was there, but no Jo. So he was very, very quickly very suspicious, and the police actually found it very suspicious. So they very quickly looked at the CCTV and everything. So Jo had come on this street for a drink. Then she'd walk up to Waitrose. She went into the shop and she didn't buy anything. Then she'd gone down to Tesco's, where she bought a pizza, Tesco Finest pizza, and 2 bottles of cider. And then she went home. I mean, it looked like she went home because her phone was at home. And when the police investigated, they could never find the pizza, which was a bit weird because if she had eaten the pizza, the packaging would be in the bin somewhere. And if she had not eaten it, the pizza would be there, you know. And eventually, a few days later, a couple with a dog walking in a park found the body. She had been brutally attacked and left in the snow. And some of you might remember, because it was all over the press at the time, the press and the police believed they had the guilty party. Everyone was convinced that it was the landlord. Let me show you that beautiful cat here. And so Jo's landlord, the press was saying he was a weird man, that some of the former tenants used to say that he would get inside of their flat with no permission, and he was a bit of a pervert, and he was a professor at school, and he used to just be very pervy and stuff. Well, the landlord was very guilty indeed of having a very weird haircut. That is the man. But he was actually innocent. The murderer was not the landlord at all. It was her neighbor, a young man called Vincent Tabak. I think the landlord actually made a lot of money because he sued all the tabloids for libel, because they had really trashed his personality and his reputation and everything. When he wasn't guilty at all, it done nothing wrong, you know. Anyway, let me show you one of the little treasures of Bristol. Ta-da! That's one of the early Banksys. It's called the well-hanged lover. So that's, I believe, 2006. And the Banksy at the time, he was starting to be known, but not like it is today, of course. It's been a bit vandalized, sadly. They put some blue on top. It is officially the first legitimate or legal piece of street art, because at the time the building belonged to the council, which is quite interesting because Banksy did this right in front of the council. This is the council building over here. But yeah, after the piece of art appeared, the council had a poll on the internet. You know, people could vote whether they should clean it or not. A whopping 97% of people agreed that they wanted to keep the art. So the council officially allowed it. Hi Sarah, and welcome everyone that just joined. Now you might see the building is on sale. It's gonna go for auctions. I think it was meant to be last week, but it's been postponed. It had been auctioned before and it sold for, I think it was £1.4 million. So that'll be interesting to see how much it sells for this time. Probably much more. The thing is, Banksy nowadays is not really taking much risk because you know, whether you go to court or to prison or anything, if you were caught for street art, it depends on the owner of the walls. If they want to take you to court, they can. But nowadays, if Banksy does anything on your walls, I mean, the price of your property is like 3 times what it was before. So no one would take him to court anyway, even if indeed he was caught. Because as you might know, he's still anonymous. Well, anonymous. We're pretty sure he's a man from here, from Bristol. We're pretty sure we kind of know his identity, but officially we don't. He was never caught. How do they actually know that Banksy does it? Natasha is asking. Good question. So he's got his official Instagram account. So whenever he does a new piece of art, the next hour or so, it's published on his Instagram account. And if you're not sure, if you, let's say you've got you bought a piece of art somewhere that claims to be a Banksy, he also has a company called Pest Control. Pest Control, because you know he used to paint a lot of rats. So you can contact them and they can identify for you whether it's a Banksy or not. And you know, talking about the rats, you know, Banksy is a very talented artist. I don't wanna diss him for any reason, but he's also very heavily been inspired by a French artist called Blake Laura that was doing very similar rats in Paris. You know, in the 90s, we didn't have Instagram and all that, so it was fairly easy to copy another artist. By the way, I don't know whether there's a story behind those little whizbands over here. If you know, let me know in the chat or in the comments later on. I don't know why they've been placed here. Anyway, so that's the city council building. And let me show you what they've done over here. That's quite cool. They have all those signs from abroad. So you've got Georgia, you've got Mozambique, France, Portugal. So it's quite cool to see all those different signs. Oh, we'll see some love locks later on as well. No, I think it's I don't know actually, it could be anything. So those are actually the twin cities of Bristol. So the French one is Bordeaux. Funnily, I've never been to Bordeaux, I shouldn't say anything really, but I think Bristol is actually much more similar to Nantes in France. Some of you might remember we've been to Nantes together. Nantes is, well, it's also sadly a city that very much benefited from the triangular trade and the sale of, of slaves and the sugar industry with the Caribbean and all that. And it's also, it's quite similar. It's also a city that's, despite a long history, it's very progressive and full of students. And the geography actually of Bristol is quite similar to the one of Nantes, because it's on the river, just a few miles away from the sea. And there's a little island here. There's a little island in the middle of the river here, same in Nantes. That's very industrial with some former shipping dockyards, and now it's very hipsterish and stuff. So anyway, if it was my choice, I would go Twin City with Nantes instead of Bordeaux. This is an Elizabethan seaman. It's the name of the statue, so I have to say seaman. Usually I try not to say seaman because I don't know how to tell the difference between seaman and seaman. You know, the people working at sea and the white liquid bodily fluid. So usually I try to avoid seaman, but it's the name of the statue, so I have to say it. So yeah, so that's the city council on my right, and let's go and take a look at the cathedral, the Bristol Cathedral. That is allegedly haunted by the ghost of a monk, a grey monk. There was once a monastery on that side. Actually, the gateway here, I think it was part of the monastery. I think that's a Tudor building. It survived the Henry VIII and the dissolution of the monasteries and stuff. Well, the building did. The monastery, I don't think it survived, but the building did. And this one here is an Indian philosopher. Pointed out, but we had Queen Victoria as well on the statue. So this is a lovely view of the Bristol Cathedral. Now let's go through, and this is the library, the Bristol Library. Now let's go through the gateway. So you'll see a bit of a contrast between those old buildings, and then suddenly we're going to have a lot of skyscrapers and modern buildings. Anyway, on College Green, there was also a murder. Well, technically there was no murder. There was a murder that was planned, but then it didn't happen. It happened elsewhere. The story, we're now back in the 18th centuries. There was, I'm going to turn around to get another view of the cathedral. There was a guy called Sir Dindley. He had just lost a grandson, so he had picked another grandson as his heir, and that was John Goodyear. So John had a little brother called Samuel, and he was a sea captain. He was in the Navy. So was Samuel, the little brother. And well, John had done fairly well for himself. You know, he had married proper. He also had an inheritance from his mum, and his little brother Samuel was very jealous already. You know, when eventually Sir Edward Dindley died, his brother John Goodyear became very rich, and the little brother was so jealous that he started to plot murder. One night, he was planning to attack his brother here on a house on College Green. And that didn't work though, because his brother turned up at a dinner party with some armed bodyguards. So the murder did not happen that night, but the little brother did not give up. He met up with his brother again a few weeks later, and he brought his two accomplices, and at that point the brother was walking towards the dock. They followed him, they kidnapped him, and There were actually some eyewitnesses, but they were like, don't worry, he's a criminal, we'll give him a lesson. So they actually forced him into a boat, the HMS Ruby. And that's where, in the captain's room, they silenced him forever. Unfortunately for them, you know, on those boats, the walls are wooden, so sometimes you get those little gaps between the different pieces of wood. For those of you that don't know, those gibbets, they were those cage. They were some kind of body cages where you'd put the dead bodies, and usually you'd put them back on the river shores. And they often did that with pirates, but it could be any other criminals. Actually, here in Clifton, apparently there was a little person, a dwarf, that was gibbeted. In century, apparently he would approach those people on a horse and carriages. At first he'll try begging, and if they didn't give him any money, he would attack and he would rob them. And eventually he ended up killing somebody, so he was gibbeted. Some said that the very spot where the gibbet was in Clifton is still haunted today. Some said that when they walk their dogs there, oh no, there's gonna be music again over here. Oh well, hopefully we won't get a copyright claim. Hello. That's the, I think I'm standing underwater here. I think usually it's like some kind of a little bassin, or I don't know why there's no water in today, but I'm pretty sure I've seen pictures of it with water. It's a popular selfie spot, I guess. Right, let's go. Let's go to see the upside down house. If at first you don't succeed, exactly, you need to find a plan B. Sorry, I just stepped on one piece of the pavement that was somehow floating. I've not seen the wheel working. I think a lot of things are actually closed on a Monday. Wheel if you want to have a nice view over the city. And let's go and see the upside down house, which is not hugely original. I think there was one in Brighton as well, and I think I've seen one in Norfolk as well. So they're starting to be everywhere now, those upside down buildings. It's a nice little attraction. People love to go inside and take photos where they look like they're walking on the ceilings and stuff. $6.99 to get inside. I haven't, but it was open today. I'll just turn around so you get a nice view of the upside down house with the wheel in the background. It's quite cool. Anyway, let's go and cross the floating harbour to go down towards Queen Square. So you know, when I talked about Bristol being quite good at acknowledging the past, that little bridge, I think it's from 1999, it is named the Perrot's Bridge after Perrot Jones. There was a young boy that was sold as a slave at the age of 12, and he was taken to Bristol, where he died as a slave. He worked for one gentleman for the rest of his life. But you know, the bridge was already named after him, and you know, that was before the Black Lives Matters movement and everything. So, you know, you get a lot of those love locks over here. It surprises me when people do that. So they've basically attached their love and they tagged into somebody else's lock. But what if this couple breaks up, find the keys, come and open their lock, then this one's lock, this love is gonna go wasted again. So I wouldn't really tag my love into somebody else's love lock. I don't know, but why not? I suppose it doesn't matter, even if the first lock was open, your love lock would still be closed. It'll just fall down into the harbor. But does that mean that your relationship would break up? Probably not. Who knows? Beautiful time to come by the water at sunset. Yeah, some of those locks are actually very strong ones. Well, you know, you probably want a strong one, because if you want your love to last forever, you might as well invest into the lock. Oh, look at this one. It's a lion head or something. Oops, sorry, my gimbal is getting confused by the lion. Anyway, let's go into a little Georgian square. Well, not so Georgian. It's Queen Anne Square, named after Queen Anne, you know, the one that was potentially a lesbian. And you can see those used to be warehouses, because you see you still have the little cranes at the top. So those little cranes would have been used to carry some barrels of I don't know, rum or bags of sugar or whatever they might be storing in there. Now they're probably quite fancy apartments, you know, to have a view on the water like this. You like the lion? Would you trust that lion with your love? It might just be beautiful, but it might not be the strongest lock. Who knows? If you go straight down that side, that's where you end up on that little island where they have the M-Shed Museum, as well as the SS Great Britain. And there's also a lot of Wallace and Gromit art and stuff, because the creator of Wallace and Gromit, as well as Shaun the Sheep, is from here. He's from Bristol. Right, let me remove him. Okay. Right, let's go into Queen Anne Square. A lot of those buildings have been rebuilt because the square was the site of some riots in the 1830s. That was the time of the reforms, you know, in terms of the voting system. You know, at the time, only people with a certain amount of property could vote. And, you know, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and stuff, at that point, poverty was quite difficult. I mean, poverty is always difficult, but a lot of people were extremely poor, you know, at that period of history. So there were some riots in the square over here. I might have a little illustration of the riots. Oop. No, I don't. Don't know what I've done with it. Oh, I'm stuck. Every time I try to show you a photo I don't have, now I need to show you another photo. Otherwise, I can't get rid of that screen. So let me show you an interesting photo that I was going to mention later on. This is the Bristol pound. You know, some of you might remember when we went to Brixton. I told you about, I actually showed you some Brixton pounds, the local money that was created after 2008, you know, after the financial crash and everything. So they've got their own currency here in Bristol as well. I've not seen any in person. I don't know if many people have. But yeah, that's the Bristol pound. On the £10 note, that is Anna More. She was an early 19th century philosopher and writer and abolitionist, actually. So you see, we had some slave traders here, but also some abolitionists. She was not much of a feminist, though, although she wanted to get an education for ladies. because when she was young, she was actually very good at mathematics, but her dad, that was a teacher, decided to stop teaching her mathematics because that was not good for girls. You know, you didn't want them to be too educated. Anyway, this is I think this is King William III. So William of Orange, you know, he's got a cigar on his head now. So, you know, the Glorious Revolution and all that. And at the time of the riots in the 1830s, at the time of Lord Earl Grey, you know, the Prime Minister Earl Grey was the one with the tea, you know, the one that liked his black tea with bergamot. So at the time of those riots, the square was full of people complaining and violence and on fire. What was the point of the Bristol pound? Well, it's just to create your own currency. There were a few towns or neighborhood in the UK doing that. I think Lewis also did that, the Lewis pound. It's an interesting initiative. To be honest, I don't really understand much of economy, and I don't think, I mean, you know, there were probably so very few published, but officially all the local businesses should have been accepting that currency as well, to somehow boost up their economy, being independent from the rest. But I don't fully understand how that'll be a good thing. And to be honest, if I turn up today in a McDonald's with a Bristol pound, I'm not even sure the staff would be aware of it. Because, you know, I live right next to Brixton myself, and most of my flatmates wouldn't even know they exist, you know. So the Bristol pounds, the Brixton pounds, the Lewis pounds, I think it was a nice initiative, but I don't think it did anything for the economy, really. But again, I don't really understand much about money, to be honest. Right, this beautiful building, the red one, that is the granary. So that's where they used to store the grain. And you see those little, those kind of little windows, the half circle, you know, those little arches. That was the ventilation, because obviously the grains, you know, you didn't want them to be moldy. Today, you've got some interesting flats inside. How much do you think they cost? If you wanted to buy a lovely 2-bedroom flat inside of the granary, how much do you think you might pay? Bearing in mind we're right in the city centre of Bristol, next to one of the most popular streets in terms of nightlife. So how much would you pay for this lovely 2-bedroom in the granary? To be honest, I found one that was the same price across the street here that had 4 bedrooms. So I think you pay a bit more to be in the granary building. So how much do you think you'd pay? Tish says 800,000. $850, says Rose. You guys are almost at London prices. I mean, Bristol is a bit cheaper. Tariq says 2 million. Genevieve, I think you're the closest so far. Let me show you the answer. 400,000. So not too bad, not too bad. Right, let me show you. We are now on the beautiful King Street. And let me show you one of the oldest pubs over here. The Landoger Frau. I've heard some people running up the staircases at the back. All of them. So it's not one witness, it's all of them. And no one was there. But talking about ghosts, the most haunted building on this street is probably right behind me, the Old Vic Theatre. I think now they work with the Old Vic in London, but it's about 250. I have a few ghosts, but there's one in particular that seemed to be a lady that somehow smelled. One in particular was a staff called Andrew. So yeah, he was walking on the corridors and someone was coming behind him. And as he got to some sets of, those double doors, those fire doors, he decided to pause to let that person go past. And as he did that, there was no one behind him. But somehow he felt someone going through anyway. And he smelled a very strong smell of lavender. Some people believe it might be a Victorian actress, but most people think it would have been the ghost of a lady called Mrs. Macready. She was the lady managing the theatre for over 20 years. She had been widowed, she lost her husband and she decided to keep the business on her own. And that smell of lavender was smelled by quite a few people. There's another one that went on with his dog, inspecting the corridors downstairs. And apparently he claims that at some point he felt some lady's breath into his face. And she was saying, "Get out, get out, get out." So he did. He just ran off. So yeah, it's a very haunted building. Anyway, so that's probably the most popular street to come and have a drink. I think, I'm not sure, but I think I might have got drunk myself on that street once. I only came to Bristol once, about 12 years ago now. That's when I used to do stand-up comedy. So I came for one evening for a comedy gig over here. I came with the mega bus or the National Express bus. I had booked one night in a very cheap hostel, and I was gonna go back the next morning with a blah 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 car. And as I was on the bus, on the coach, I should say, I don't really like to be on the telephone when I'm in public transport because it's just not nice, But I thought, you know what? Maybe I should call the hostel to double check that there are indeed 24 hours reception, because it was quite far south. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a hostel called 007 Hostel. And there would have been like maybe 10 or 12 people in the same room. It was not even bunk beds. It was those little beds, like they have in Tokyo sometimes, like a little cabin, like 3 beds on top of one another, but it's more like a little cave, really. Anyway, and so I'm on the coach and I'm like, maybe I should ring them just to check what time they close, right? Or if indeed I can turn up at 1 a.m. So I rang the reception. The lady that picked up, I think she was Australian, and she's like, "Hey, hello." I'm like, "Yeah, I just wanted to check that you have a 24-hour reception as it says on the listing." And she's like, yeah, if you're not too drunk. I was like, "Oh, I'm not planning on being drunk, but I just want to check that someone will be at reception after midnight." She's like, "Yeah, if you're not too drunk." And I was like, "No, we've already established I'm not planning on being drunk. I'm just coming for a comedy gig, but I might turn up very, very late. So is there gonna be someone opening the door?" And she's like, "If you're not too drunk." She said it at least like 4 or 5 times. So I was like, okay, I gave up. And I went to my gig. And I don't know what happened. I think I went for drinks with people from the audience. And I think we went into one of those pubs, because I remember it was one of the oldest pubs in Bristol. And guess what? I got drunk. And I didn't want to pay for a taxi, so I actually walked all the way down, like an hour's walk all the way to the 007 Hostel. And as I got there, I couldn't find the place. And there's a taxi that drove past. I was like, you know what? I'm going to jump into a taxi for 1 minute or two because he would know the place, right? I jumped into a taxi. He didn't know either. So we were going in circle around and around the block. Eventually, I found the place. I knocked at the door. The receptionist, she was pissed. She was on Skype with a bottle of cider, and she was like, do you want to say hello to my friend in Australia? So yeah, we both had a lot of ciders, so she didn't mind anymore whether I was drunk or not. People drink a lot of cider over here in Bristol because we're quite close to, Somerset, of course, and Somerset is a great. It's a region where they produce a lot of cider. But anyway, that was a funny night. I mean, I understand why they don't want people to be drunk, because when you have 12 people in a room, it's really annoying when people turn up drunk at 2 a.m. like myself. But that was funny. Sadly, I don't remember much of the evening, so I'm glad I came to Bristol again to explore a bit more. I actually really wanted to come back since watching the Outlaws on BBC. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's one of the best BBC comedies of the last 10 years. It's a very, very funny show called The Outlaws. So it's all set in Bristol, so I wanted to come here again since I watched it. It's with the actress from Baby Reindeer, Jessica Gunning.
But now I get to be the annual.
Anyway, let's go down into the old town. Oh, I wanted to show you the building behind me. Hold on. See, I'm talking about being drunk and I forget what I should be showing you. So, let me turn around. This beautiful white building over here. Today it's some kind of little markets really, and shops. But that used to be a theater. And The Outlaws, it's very funny. I love it. It's about people doing community service. So they came in for minor crimes, and it's just the most original bunch of people that becomes friends, and it's very good. Yeah. Anyway, so this little building that used to be a theater, and in the 1940s, one night there was an intruder. They didn't think much of it, but that intruder might be linked to another crime that happened the very same night in another theater, or movie theater. Cinema. It is the Odeon. We're not gonna go all the way up to the Odeon, but there was a very interesting case in there. I think it's 1946. The movie was on. It was a movie about a military guy that was losing his eyesight, and he went back to Sudan, and at some point there's a war scene with a lot of gunshots. So no one realized that, they heard the gunshots from a movie, but they didn't realize that there was an actual gunshot at the very same time. And a few minutes later, the manager from the cafe area went up to the manager's office to ask him if he wanted a cup of tea. And when he got to the office, he was shocked to find that the manager, he was known as Jacko, he had been shot. He was dead or dying on the floor. Of course, the police was called. It looked like it might have been a robbery, but the money was not taken. The Jacko, the manager that had been killed, had the keys from the safe in his pocket. And a few minutes before that, he was joking with the staff. He had just been to collect the money from the tills. And he was a very popular guy. He had worked in Hollywood. He used to be an extra in the movies, and then he came back to live down here. But people loved him. They couldn't find him any enemies or anything of the sort. And the police kind of followed any leads they might have. They looked at any eyewitnesses, anyone that came into the theater that night, anyone looking suspicious. And that's how they found that there was an intruder in the other cinema, the one we've just seen, but they don't even know if it's connected or not. And that was never solved until the 90s, when one guy from South Wales called Jeff Fisher came to tell the police that his dad had made a deathbed confession. He said that one day in the 40s he had wanted to attack a cinema in Bristol. He came for a robbery. It didn't go to plan. They shot the manager and they escaped through a little hole in the roof. Oh, you can hear the bells. That's great. And of course, you see, you've got those things against the pigeons. So if they tried to come here, their bum-bums would be spiked. Anyway, so yeah, we still don't know for sure whether he was the killer of the Odeon, because of course he's dead, so it's very unlikely to get any evidence now. Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Nate. This building across the street there, that's the commercial rooms. It's quite a good-looking Wetherspoons pub. Anyway, we are now in the heart of the old city. And straight ahead, it is Corn Street, where today you have a little, the market would be closed at this time, but it's a lovely little market. But I need to show you the building of the Corn Exchange, because you'll see the clock is rather unusual. You tell me in the chat if you see anything weird with that clock. Can you read the time actually? Let me know if you can read the time, okay? You can try to zoom in, but sometimes it gets stuck. Let me show you. So you've got the hours, you've got the minutes, but it's very confusing because you've got two different ones for the minutes. Well, that is because that was Bristol time. You know, before the railway and before we agreed on Greenwich time and stuff, Bristol was actually on its own time, like most cities in the country. So we were about 8 minutes behind London. So the black one, see the one facing down at the moment, that's actually Bristol time. Interesting. That's quite rare to see anything like that. And let me show you those nails. They were for the traders to do their deals. When they had a deal, they'd put the money down here. Some say it's the origin of the phrase cash on the nail, and some say that's why they've got those little thing here so the coins wouldn't run off. Although apparently it's probably not true. People were already saying cash on the nails before those little nails. Well, Bristolians like to believe it is where the expression came from. And there was a lady that lost her job in the little parallel here, St. Nicholas Street. A lady that worked in a poultry store. She was given the sack. She was quite poor. Well, you know, we're going back now to the 1830s, so that's the time of the revolt we talked about earlier. And poverty was very, very difficult at the time, you know, especially for ladies, because in terms of the jobs, you know, apart from selling stuff or doing sewing or stuff like that, it was difficult to get a job. Anyway, beautiful. So you see, it's a glassed street, really. It's a market, of course, but you can see it used to be a street. So they've decided to cover the full street. It's all closed at this time, but at that time, those are like street food traders. So that's That's lovely. Although not everything was opened earlier. I don't know if it's because it's Monday or if it's because some of the businesses in the city center are not doing as well as they used to. The corn exchange, isn't that where Scrooge did his deal? But you've got corn exchange in every city, Linda. So I don't think it would be in this one. Maybe. I don't know whether we had much literature. Well, actually, you know the pub I showed you earlier, Daniel Defoe, you know the oldest one, the one with the wooden beams. Daniel Defoe used to visit, and apparently he had met a privateer in there where he probably got inspired with Robinson Crusoe. But in terms of Dickens, I don't know whether we've got much Dickens inspiration here. Maybe. I mean, Dickens has been everywhere, so he probably would have come to Bristol as well. So anyway, let's get back to our murder lady. But before that, let me show you a creepy little, just a water fountain, but I think it looks a bit creepy. Let me show you. Hold on, I'm just gonna manage to go through the bicycles. Oops. There we go. That's one of the oldest water fountains in here. It was placed there to celebrate Queen Victoria's 40th birthday, but I think it looks a bit scary, don't you? Anyway, let me get out of the bicycles. So yeah, this lady that was fired from here, her name was Marianne Bordock. She'd gone through a few boyfriends or husbands even, and she was from a poor background, but eventually she managed to open a lodging house. She looks catatonic. So some of you might remember we talked about those lodging houses in many of my tours. It's people that had a property that would sublet or let some of the bedrooms to different people. Not so different from what we do today in London, you know, with all those flat shares. You've got a lot of completely different people living together. But in Victorian times, those well, actually, I say Victorian times. I think we are in 1833, so that's even before Queen Victoria. So I should say in the 19th century. In the 19th century, those lodging houses, very often the landlady lived inside, and sometimes they even had servants, and sometimes they'll cook for you and stuff. So it was not only a flat share like it is today, and so Marianne had her own lodging house, and eventually there's an old lady that moved in. Her name was Clara Ann Smith. She was an old widow that had some money, and she was very sickly. She was coughing all the time, and as soon as she moved in, and as soon as Sarah realized that, as soon as Marianne realized that Clara had some money, she was all about Clara. She was doing everything she could for her. She even hired a maid to help her, the old lady, and she became ever so friendly with her. And eventually, she convinced the old lady. The old lady, you see, she didn't really trust the banks, so she had a lot of cash in a little tin box. A lot of cash. And so eventually Marianne convinced Sarah to let her take care of the cash for her, of course. And at that point, as soon as the old lady said okay, Sarah, I don't know why I keep calling her Sarah, Marianne started spending the money, and eventually one day the old lady died. Interesting. At that point, Marianne, of course, paid off all her debts. She became a very wealthy lady, and she was not shy about it. She would talk about her money. She said she'd come into some money because she'd lost a relative and she had got a little inheritance. Oh, thanks ever so much, Linda. That's very much appreciated. And eventually, though, so at that point, her husband Charles died, and she married another Charles. Eventually, though, 14 months later, the old lady's nephews heard about her passing, and they were like, "Oh, hold on, where is the money?" And they actually contacted Marianne, and Marianne said, no, she died in poverty. I actually had to sell some of her items of clothing to pay for the funerals. She had buried her in a pauper's grave. And the nephews and nieces were like, no, that can't be right. Their old auntie definitely had a lot of money. Her husband had a shop and stuff. And they told the police. So the police started to investigate, and they actually interviewed a few of the staff. The little maid that had been hired especially to take care of the old lady, she actually stated that Marianne had put some yellow powder in a bowl of soup for the old lady. And one of the other staff actually said, yeah, the landlady sent me to buy some arsenic at the shop to get rid of the rats, when no one in the house was aware that there was a rat problem. Well, at that point, the police had to exhume the body. The old lady had been buried for 14 months by then. When they exhumed the body, it was very well preserved. If any of you followed any of my tours when we talked about arsenic and antimony, that those type of poison actually somehow preserve your body. So it's not unusual to find a body very well preserved. And eventually, yes, they found the arsenic. Marianne never ever admitted poisoning the old lady, but she was jailed at New Gaul, and she was hanged with an audience of 50,000. And apparently, though, she had ordered her own coffin, and she spent her last night sleeping right next to the coffin. She was buried on the former jail's burial ground. I say former jail because I'll be doing a little short. I've been filming the jail today, because today it's a very interesting residential complex. You have some very new flats and only the gateway of the old jail, so that's quite cool. Hi Tony, nice to see you here, and welcome everyone that just joined. Oh, this is not the cobbled castle. This is a former church. This is the St. Peter's Church. We'll go and take a look, because you'll see it's not what it looks like. It's actually been quite dramatically bombed through the Bristol Blitz. Anyway, I've got a couple more murder stories for you before we go. They are not really here in central Bristol, they're more in the residential areas, but the stories are so good that I need to tell you anyway. In 1849, there was one night a lady called Mrs. Fry. She woke up at 5 a.m. because she heard some shouting in the room in the next building, one of those Victorian terraces. And because she was annoyed, because that woke her up, she used her cane to bang the wall to tell them off. That came from Mrs. Jeffreys or neighbors. And that was it. She went back to bed. A couple of hours later, someone knocked at the door. It was a young girl. She introduced herself. She was like, I've been sent from next door. I'm the maid. I'm Sarah. I'm Mrs. Jeffrey's maid. I've been sent to apologize for the noise this morning. Oh, I'm ever so sorry. You see, it's because a cat jumped on Mrs. Jeffrey's bed. So she was a bit spooked. That's why I do apologize. You must have thought we were killing one another. And Mrs. Fry did not buy it. She was convinced that it was actually the little maid that had screamed because Mrs. Jeffrey was trying to wake her up at 5 a.m. Mrs. Jeffrey had a terrible reputation. She was apparently quite mean, and she had gone through quite a few different maids over the last few months. And no one liked her. Apparently she had no friends. Well, she did have one friend that tried to come and visit that very day. She knocked at the door. No answer, because Mrs. Jeffries was dead. And of course the police turned up. The police wanted to interview the little Sarah, the maid. They looked for her everywhere. They went into her parents' address. The mum was like, oh no, I don't know where she is. Eventually they found little Sarah under the coal hole. And Sarah first claimed that it was Jeffrey's brother that came along, and then eventually she claimed that it was a former maid that had knocked at the door, gained access into the property, and paid her some money for her to zip it. The former maid was called, she said, Maria Wilson? No, she didn't remember. Maria Jeffrey? So the police did follow the lead, the police did look for Maria everywhere. They actually did contact all the agencies, because Mrs. Jeffries was so mean that she needed some new staff all the time. But it was started to look very bad for Sarah, because there were some witnesses that had seen her and another friend of her moving some of the property's items, the very same day. The interesting thing is that the dog had been killed as well. The dog used to bark at people that they didn't know, but the dog would have known the little maid. And they found the weapon. It was like a big block that would have been a door block. I cannot say it. A door blocker. It was like a big block that had some pieces of Mrs. Jeffrey's hair on it and skin. So that would have been the murder. Eventually, though, the little girl was arrested. And she never confessed. She was only 17 years old. The prosecution they tried to get her to confess, but she never did. So she was hanged. Only 17 or 19 years old. Yeah, the doggy as well. Right, let me show you the beautiful church. So that was, it's now almost like a little, almost like a war memorial, you see, because it was bombed through the Bristol Brits. And we decided to keep it as it is, as a memorial of the war and the horrors of the war. So you've got, you see all the name, and I'll show you the inside, or what I can show you of. A bit like Sanderson in the east, we've been together in the city of London. Sadly, we can't really access the inside. I think they're doing a bit of. It's been kept as it is, and it's not being refurbished. So that's a little monument to remember the horrors of the Bristol Brit. But yeah, beautiful. I think I've lost the signal for a sec. Hopefully we'll be back very soon. Yeah, sorry, I've lost you for a sec. Just a little signal drop, but we should be all good now. Right, one last little murder story before we go. There was a horrible case of stalking in early Victorian time as well. Maybe even before. I think 1821. So not even Victorian yet. Stalking, even today, stalking is a difficult one to. A boy that was very much into a young girl called Eliza. He was very young. He would have been 16 years old. His name was John Horwood. Sorry, I've lost you again, so I'll get back into what I was saying. The young boy was very much a church goer and everything. He would tell her that if she got with anyone else, he would kill her. At some point, he turned up at her house. He was saying, "He'll kill her. He'll kill me." Oh, you're getting stuck. So let me know in the chat when we are back. Oh, that's a shame. I was thinking Let me know in the chat if you can hear me, if the signal is back. I'm just running as far as I can from the spot with no signal. Hopefully it'll get better. Is it still buffering now? Let me know. Better now. One day he saw her with 3 young men. He grabbed a big rock and he threw it on her face, really. Eliza was extremely bad. They took her home. She survived for about 5 days and then she passed away. Oh, it goes again. Oh, sorry, I'm just... Well, it's the end of the tour anyway, so I'll just finish that story. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Oh, is it good now? Okay, good. I might be getting some of those messages a bit delayed. So yeah, he had killed her. He was of course arrested. There were some witnesses. There were a lot of evidence. So the boy was hanged at New Gaul as well. And at the time, you know, when the hangman was gonna execute you in front of a crowd of people, sometimes they'll give you an handkerchief. So the criminal would have a little handkerchief in their hand, and as a signal that they were ready to die, they'll drop it, and the hangman would then kill them. Well, apparently, little John Horwood, it took him 25 minutes before it finally dropped the dissected. You know, at the time, the only bodies that were given to science were the bodies from the criminals. So some of his friends actually were waiting to ambush the cart that would carry the body down to the anatomist. But the authorities were aware that it might happen, so they actually took him down at night. So his body was given to the anatomist. He was dissected in front of the students and everything. He was skinned, and would you believe his skin was used as a book binder. So they did a little book with his leathered skin, and it was a book about his story and his murder case. Apparently the book still exists today somewhere in the archives. It's not really accessible to the public because of the conditions, you know. But yeah, you can. It is still around today. And if the signal is good, I might tell you a last little story. And so yeah, 2 centuries earlier, there was a similar case here. It was above a pub called the Lamb Inn, that was old and 8 years old. They lived above the pub, and they just gonna go to the other side because there's quite a lot of homelesses in Bristol. I think I don't know whether there are more than London or if they're just much more visible, but yeah, you see a lot of people begging on the street, sadly. Anyway, so yeah, the guy Richard Giles, his name was, he had these 2 daughters, Molly and Debbie, and in their bedroom started the drama. Objects started to levitate. The chamber pots were like whirling around. And eventually it became physical. The girls were being attacked by some invisible force. They were getting beaten on their necks and stuff. So very quickly, Henry Durbin, I think his name was, he came to investigate, and that's why the case is very well documented, although it dates back to 1761, because the chemist actually was recording everything that would happen there. He would actually go pretty much every night into the bedroom, kind of like the Enfield Portergeist, you know, and he would record all the action. And eventually they managed to speak to the ghost, so they would speak to him, ask him questions, and he would answer by tapping. And there were more investigators that came along, and some of them were very surprised that they tried to speak to him in Latin, in Greek, and in Hebrew, and the ghost would answer. So the ghost would actually understand several languages. Apparently someone had asked an old witch to put a curse. Eventually, where we were, I've lost you for a sec, but hopefully we are back. So yeah, eventually the investigators contacted a witch, and I shit you not, that's what happened, or at least that's what they recorded. So that witch decided to tell them that to stop the hauntings, to stop the ghost, they had tried everything. They had tried exorcism and stuff. There was a reverend from Corn Street that tried to exorcise the property. That didn't work. They tried everything. But apparently that witch told them that they had all they had to do was to take the content of the chamber pots from the little girls, put it in a pan, like a cooking pot, and cook it. And apparently that's what they did. So they basically cooked the human waste from those little girls, and some kind of rainbow appeared, and then the ghost didn't come back, or at least the haunting stopped. So that's a very interesting case, and it's all very much documented and stuff. And it's funny because the guy Henry, you wouldn't think he would be making things up, because he didn't even publish the story. All those documents were published after he was dead. So, you know, it wasn't like a con artist trying to make money out of a fake ghost. He was a very curious chemist trying to investigate whatever was happening at the Lamb Inn. So interesting case. Interesting way to get rid of a ghost as well. But yeah, it's probably one of the most documented cases of ghosts in Bristol, and that's from 1761. So that's a very old poltergeist indeed. Anyway, that's gonna be the end of the tour. Let me show you my face again. Let's go down this way to have a bit of light. And let me know in the chat if you have any questions for me before we go. Let's see what time it is, because I've got time. Sorry, I've just lost you for a sec. If any of you were watching the replay in the next few weeks and you wonder why you get those little cuts, it is of course the signal, because this is recorded live. So as you watch, they sometimes play with us. Yes, my next tour is in Windsor, so that's next Tuesday. I'll take you to Windsor. Sorry. No, don't worry. Natasha, I've not seen your question. Oh, here it is. Next week, Windsor. The week after that, in Goldmill, next to Skegness. And after that, I've not scheduled any further, but I think it'll be time to take you back to Brompton Cemetery. We can go there at 7 p.m. or something. The occupation of pirate is no longer around. I'm not sure I get it, Mark. All right, no worries, Natasha. You'll ask me next time. Thanks everyone for coming. Have a great evening, or a great morning, a great afternoon, whatever time it is for you. wherever you are in the world. Yes, cemetery. So yeah, let's go to Brompton. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye. Yes, safe travels. I'll get home about 1:30 tonight.